This is what I think happens. If your only definition is more is better than less, and then you give people the opportunity to visibly do work at every moment of their life, those two things don't play well together.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we get this burnout epidemic that just starts in the early 2000s, and it just goes, and then the pandemic sort of pushes people over the edge, and they're saying enough.
Right. So what's the relationship between productivity and walks? Because I feel like people who are truly productive, not people who sit at their desk and pound at things all day, but I feel like people who have big scientific breakthroughs, artists, people who have theories about the world, whatever, there seems to be an undeniable relationship with walks.
Yeah. Well, they come up all the time, and there's a good neurological reason for it. But first, like where walks become important is once you realize what's important is like we were talking about before, actually having the valuable idea, like figuring out something good. It's not just writing, which we can use with like scarecrows, is like just doing stuff, right? You actually have to think, right? Walks are really common historically for big thinkers. We think like this, it's not exactly nailed down, but we think what's going on is that the motor neurons involved in walking actually act as a bit of a dampener on certain circuits in your brain, right? So part of your brain now gets into these autonomous motion loops, which acts as a dampener on essentially neural noise. So more distracting thoughts or asides, you're thinking about this or that. So when you're sitting still, sometimes the problem is there's not enough dampening going on in your brain. And so it's hard to sustain your focus. Right. When you're walking, it puts on some cognitive blinders. You have an easier time holding your focus on an interior abstract idea. So it's jerry-rigging your brain to be better at this thing that's pretty artificial for humans to do, which is to hold abstract ideas in our mind's eye. And, this is not what we evolved to do. We're hacking.
We're certainly not evolved to just sit down for long periods of time either, but we are evolved to cover long distances and look for things and explore places.
And take in information while we're walking and process, right? Yeah. So all we're doing different now in the modern world is we're just turning the eye inward.
Yeah.
So instead of taking in information across the savannah and kind of processing all this information, instead we're walking on the river walk in Bastrop. Yeah. We can just turn that eye inner and put it on internal things. But yeah, it's the same idea. So walking, it's super common. That's why. I mean, I do all of my best thinking walking.
Me too.
Yeah.
Nietzsche said only ideas had while walking have any worth.
Nietzsche walked a lot.
Yeah. Kierkegaard would walk just hours a day. I mean, Aristotle's school is named after his movements, his walking, right? And so, there is, it's almost inseparable scientific discovery, philosophical discourse, and walking. Even though the irony is, when we think of the philosophers, we think of them standing in the Lyceum or in the school, or we see them stationary. But in fact, they were always in motion.
You read the various dialogues, right? The Aristotelian dialogues, and they're walking. It's Socrates with Phaedrus, and they're walking by the river as they're talking, right? That's the way it unfolds. You know who the champion walker in the arts right now is? David Sedaris.
Or doesn't he walk around and pick up trash?
He does. He will. But these walks he does are epic.
Yeah,
like crazy walks. Like when he's in Manhattan, he'll walk from the Battery all the way up to the Upper West. He'll just walk the whole island or whatever. He'll walk 10, 15 miles.
No, he got an award from the Queen because he would just take these walks, and then he started picking up trash while he was on the walks, which I also do. I live on this dirt road, and so I'll sort of walk it over and over again, and it's there's another nail, or whatever. Sometimes it's not. It's even worse than that. But there's something about, you're doing this thing, so there's not really any expectations that you should be working or that you should have the breakthrough. And perhaps that's where it comes from too, like Archimedes in the bath or whatever. It's when you've turned, it's still operating in the background because you can't turn it off, the thing that's working on the problem. But when you stop being so willful about it, something unlocks, and it's very powerful.
And it comes to you. Yep.
Yes.
Do you also I get this in my town, people think you're eccentric. You probably get it worse here. At least I live in a little town outside of DC, but I walk these same loops through my neighborhood, and they're like, oh, there goes. I mean, they know it now because we're a small enough town. Yeah. But people are like, why do you walk so much? I was like, this is what I do for a living, I think.
The way that it has intersected with my life is, it's like, okay, so you got to get on the phone with someone for this thing. And I'll send you the invite. And then I don't look at the invite until I'm about to get on, and it's like, oh, this is like a Zoom call with 15 people. I'm already walking. So then now I have to make up this excuse for why it's loud where I am, or that I'm not at my computer. Like, oh, I'm out in the country. And so,
I'm trying to get reception. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's like, I already didn't want to do this call.
Yeah.
And if you told me that to do this call, I had to sit at my desk for 30 minutes and not move or be outside, I'd want to do it even less.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I do almost all my phone calls walking. So sometimes that can be weird in a small town because people are like, oh, hey, I want to talk. And I'm like, but yeah, I try to move. Also, yeah, the only one that caused problems for me is like if you're doing like therapy or whatever, if you do it over the phone, and it's like, I don't know if I should be talking about this like out in the thing, but I also, again, don't just want to sit there for no reason for an hour. And so, yeah, I think being active and moving, it's first off, it's just better than being sedentary for you physically, and then psychologically and mentally, there's just something very, very powerful.
So we have
about
three. We're going to write a book about this, Ryan. So we have three elements of what we're going to call the artist's life. Right now, right? We've discussed three elements, right? So one is the work expectations are tomorrow doesn't matter, but this month does, right? Two, you can be done by 3.
Yes.
And start at 9.
Yeah.
And then the third one is you can spend a lot of time walking.
Yes.
Like that to me, my heart's singing, right? Like that's all I want.
That's a great life.
That's
a great
all
day.
I want. Yeah. Yeah. Now I do it a little differently because I'm a believer in seasonality.
Okay.
Right. So different seasons being different than others. This is like an old professor thing, right? And so it'll look different for me where this semester might be my teaching semester. So I largely now just teach in one semester.
Yeah.
So, a lot of these days I'm going on the campus and I'm meeting with students, and it's like it's academic life. But then there'll be like another semester when I'm going to campus one day a week and I'm more at my studio and writing. And then the summers we disappear. Yeah. Right. And we often go up to New England. And then it's like I'm completely off the grid. And like the only thing I'm doing is book writing, maybe like some New Yorker work, but probably just book writing. So I lean in the seasonality. So sometimes that's the answer. It's like, well, I still want to be a professor.
Right.
So sometimes it's not all going to be I'm done at 3 or I'm walking a lot, because some days I'm in the classroom and have a meeting with the dean. So why not make that this season of the year and then on bigger time scales too. Like I'm doing book publicity now.
Yeah.
This is not, if I had to operate like this.
Yeah. This is the worst.
It's the worst. It's just, it's fun for like a while because I get to see people, but it's like the worst because it's not this is the fun part. The worst is like my email right now. There must be 7 different teams that all are just like, we need this. Can you do this? Can you get back to me on this? There's
it starts to feel like it's probably for you a glimpse of what regular life is for a lot of people.
I think if you're like a higher level executive that like a lot of people needed things from, it probably feels like book tour all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
No, the seasonality thing is interesting, and it's probably a throwback to an older way of life. It's like politicians, the Washington would clear out during the summer because it was a malarial swamp or whatever, right? Or school, has always sort of been in the seasons, but people used to do things that way, whereas now, and I find myself doing it, I am much more of a like, well, what does my ideal day look like? And I'm just going to do that all the time. But there is probably something unrealistic and unnatural about doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and not having large chunks of time where you're doing it differently and you're forced to re-examine and question and try it a new way in a new place. And so I am trying, especially as my kids are getting older, and now, this is the season we're in school. So if I had some idea that like I don't do meetings on Friday and I'm going to stay at home, well, that was great when they were 2. Yeah. Because they were around, but now they're gone all day. So I might as well go. I might as well. So yeah, I think the rhythms of, this is baseball season, and then the rhythms of this is the winter, and not only are the hours shorter, but we're all sick all the time. Yeah. So the hell with your plans. You know what I mean? The season of accepting that instead of having a routine, you have a series of routines, and you rotate either seasonally or day to day or different days of the week through which one makes the most sense.
So I had a couple of weeks ago a New York Times op-ed on this idea, on seasonality. And one of the things I was arguing is this is so valuable to humans, right? It's because it's the way we lived until, evolutionary speaking, like a blink ago.
This is when we're farming. This is when we hunt the buffalo.
And I went back to all that. It's all over the place. I wrote a long New Yorker piece about this last year too, where I looked at what do we know about hunter-gatherers and like what work looked like for them. it's important enough that it's worth sacrifices as well.
Yeah.
So like, here's something I'm considering. Because I'm not, my podcast is not with a network. We still sell ads, directly with an agency, and you sell ads, as you know, like a year in advance. Basically, you fill out the year ahead. Yeah. So I'm thinking about for the next year, talking, you know my agency. Yeah. I hope they're not listening, but saying,
I still work with them. They're great.
Yeah, they're great. But I'm thinking about saying, let's not sell 52 weeks, right? In fact, let's take, why don't we sell like 45 or 46 weeks? And I am going, because I'm not going to podcast in July.
And why don't you just batch the production and sell all year round?
Well, I could do that too, but then that's also more like, just what I mean by because I was thinking about this. I was like, well, what would happen if I just said we're going to take 6 weeks off or 2 months off, no batching, just like the show's on hiatus there. I was like, okay, what does happen? Well, it's less money.
Yeah.
But I like, this might be a fair trade though.
No, I do like that, because I tend to do the batching thing.
It's a signal as well to myself, right? Of like, hey, wait a second. This is so important to me to unwind. I'm willing to, we're giving up money to do this. Yeah. And then it becomes a brand signal. Like, hey, I actually take the time, there's a whole way to make it work.
I'm struggling with this right now. Like, this has like been a very, very crazy week for me. I think we did like 8 interviews, and then I have a bunch next week, and then I have meetings. I have a bunch of stuff.
So you're batching ahead with interviews?
No, I didn't think I was, but I was like, why is this so crazy? And then I realized the reason it's so crazy, first off, it's something that's outside of my control, which is it's South by Southwest in Austin. So a bunch of people are here. Right. So that like, they were just like, this is the only time they can do it in person. But then I realized really what's happening is I'm going out of town for like 10 days for my kids' spring break. So what happened is I took 10 days off the calendar. Yeah. So it just moved that stuff this way or that way.
Yep.
And so you like we went out of town for a month this summer, and it was great. But then I was like, why was it not as relaxing as I thought it would be? And it's because I didn't just continue on with my normal schedule, and then there was a month gap, and then I continued on with my normal schedule.
Yeah.
It was all the things that had to happen while I was not doing the things for a month basically just made the preceding month and the proceeding month more stressful than it needed to be. And it might have been a wash, right? And so the idea of like, no. Like it's more like the rapture. Like I just go to the thing and then I disappear and then maybe I'll come back.
So that's real. I'm inventing this term now, but real seasonality versus fake seasonality. It's fake seasonality if during this period I'm doing less work, but that work all still got done.
Yes.
We just moved it or whatever. Real seasonality is we know Ryan disappears like for this month.
Yeah.
Like
can't go outside, it's raining. That's real seasonality.
We've known that for a year in advance.
Yeah.
Like just we've been booking the schedule, we just, book around it. I figured this out as an academic. So if you had a research institution as a professor, the university does not pay your salary in the summer. They pay you 10 months salary.
Yeah.
Like your contract.
But can you pick your paychecks to like, my mom was a teacher. They were like, do you want 12 months of paychecks or do you want 10 months of paychecks? But it's the same salary.
So no one does that, because what you do instead, if you're a researcher, is you put in what's called summer salary into your research grants. So you fill in those 2 months. Now it's like the National Science Foundation or DARPA is paying it because you're like, I should be working on research in the summer. And so that's what people do, right? So now you're taking your summer salary comes in, from a grant or something like this. And then what people think is like, okay, but I still want to take vacations or this or that, but I am on the hook to keep working. So they have to do fake seasonality, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point I figured out you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Like, what if you just say, I'm not taking summer salary from a grant. As far as the university is concerned, you're not their employee in those 2 months. Like there's nothing for you to do. They can't ask you to do anything. Like you're gone or whatever. And I figured out at some point, like, oh, why not just, I write books. Like, wouldn't that be a good use of part of a book advance is to cover the summer? And like this was and that was real seasonality versus fake. I was doing fake before, which is summers are more flexible. Because I don't have to teach, and we can go travel and like do things, but also like I'm working and I have to write these reports or this or that. When I went to real seasonality, like, no, I'm taking a sacrifice. I'm losing money, but I owe nothing to no one during this time. It really changed the character. That's why I wanted to make the podcast be protected in the summer as well. So it's just we just know in advance. Like I completely shut down.
Yeah, I think your tricky part is going to be audiences are not seasonal. I mean, you are on TV shows, right? And that you're like whatever. Yeah. But if a thing is more like a daily or a weekly habit, breaking that habit is hard. So
but here's my thought on. I thought about that.
Yeah.
So this is why podcasting I think is okay.
Yeah,
because podcasting doesn't. It's push not pull, right? So like, why do I listen to like Cal's podcast? Like I like it, and I see it come up in my list of new episodes, and I listen to it. All right, you go away for 6 weeks. it's not showing up in their list. You come back, it just shows up again. They're already subscribed to the show, right? And when it comes back again, like, oh yeah, I like listening to Cal's show, right? Like it's
Sort
not
of.
that hard for them to get the habit back.